So, hey everybody, welcome to Higher Ed Solo. I am here today talking to Eric Stoller, who is a higher ed consultant. So Eric,
Face immediately, as if that was a dirty word. I am a higher education consultant. I suppose I should fill in what that
yes,
means
please
for
tell us
folks
what
who
it
are,
means.
who are watching from the cheap seats. Um, Basically, I do consulting within higher education, student affairs, administration, and a little bit of Marcom for institutions. So mostly strategic communications, social media, technology, but it can cover a lot of different things. From academic advising, career services, student life, leadership, conduct. I'm kind of all over the map when it comes to my consulting. So higher education consultant is kind of a good umbrella term. And then I also do the student affairs and technology blog for
I
InsideHigherEd.com.
hollered at Eric and I said, hey, I know that one of my business pains, my personal business pains, is working with student affairs, student services, because it's kind of one of those um, diaphanous kind of areas where a lot of things can be encompassed. Um, and it involves a lot of customer service, which, if y'all saw my rant about being the brand, then you understand that that's an important thing to me. Um, but a lot of people don't realize that probably we all have involvement in student services at some point. So I wanted to talk to Eric about student affairs and student services and how we as solo practitioners can pick up a couple of not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but simple things that we ought to be doing to support those areas of our business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think I would say for me as someone who sort of bridges the gap between traditional student affairs and more the sort of business orientation of the house when it comes to sort of university advancement, university communications. My undergrad's in PR and marketing and communications, so I sort of have that background, and then my master's degree is in higher ed administration, more college student services based. So I try to sort of meld those together, and so one of the things too, I think, is it's important to understand the history of sort of where student affairs came from because we've always had sort of two sides of the house, sort of two primary silos, if you will, and you've got academic affairs, which is someone's major in their degree program, and at the end of the day, what's on their diploma, and then you've got sort of student affairs, which isn't always the same at every institution. For example, enrollment management is a big part of the student affairs sort of umbrella, as I like to say, because it involves recruitment, admissions, financial aid, registrar. But at a lot of institutions, they wouldn't even consider that student affairs. They would say that's something else or it's underneath a different VP of this or that. And then, sort of at a lot of places, student affairs would be student life, your dean of students, your student organizations, student leadership, student activities, residence life, disability services, multicultural affairs, student conduct is typically in there, and a few other areas usually kind of get lumped in. And so, the biggest thing for a lot of folks to sort of figure out what student affairs is you're absolutely right. It is a sort of combination of a lot of different things, and it's not consistent at every single school. And so when it comes to working with folks in student affairs, it's almost as if you have to interview folks at the divisional level to say, okay, what does student affairs mean to you, so that I don't just assume that this is what student affairs is like for you and your school. And just so you know what life is like in the trenches of student affairs, because it makes it easier for you to then talk about it to external constituencies when you're thinking about strategy, you're thinking about the student affairs folks. Uh, the other thing I'd say is that student affairs is kind of notorious for not having good tools. And so, you all might have, let's say, a poster or a design in InDesign that you've got a template or a file and you want to share it. The student affairs folks might still have to they might be using Publisher or Microsoft Word or something. And so it's just getting them up to par with what you're doing, or they might not have the right fonts installed, things like that. I mean, it sounds kind of basic, but a lot of times student affairs, we come from the historical helping profession where our bread and butter is face-to-face interactions with students. And it's not about hopping on a computer and messing around with Photoshop or doing videography that's at a really high level. So sometimes it's saying, how can we partner up with student affairs? How can we get to know them? Because the thing is, student affairs folks know the story. If you're looking for what's going on campus, awesome tales of interactions with parents and family members, with alums, with current students, student affairs folks have that by the truckload. Yeah. So there's this big document that everybody who's ever gone through a student affairs graduate program has probably seen or had access to or referenced. It's called the CAS standards. It's the Council for the Advancement of Standards in Higher Education, and everyone calls it's the CAS standards book, and it lists all the functional areas within student affairs. And in all those functional areas, it mentions briefly a little bit on strategic communications, but strategic communications isn't part of our history. It's not how we think about what we're doing. And so when you look at lifetime engagement all the way from just let's just say recruitment until you're an alum and beyond, we don't think about what it means to interact with students from that A to B, A to Z branding perspective. I just gave a webinar, I guess it was last week for Inside Higher Ed on student affairs advancement, student affairs sort of building that brand so that development opportunities could occur because most of the time students are going to give back to, I'm talking about alums, excuse me, they're going to give back to their academic program or maybe to athletics, usually to the big name sports like, football or basketball got them really excited about their school. And so you think about student affairs, you think about, we were there at admissions. We're the ones who sent them their letter that said, hey, welcome. You're going to be a member of this community now. Or guess what? You're living in this residence hall and you're going to be here for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, or even longer than that. You've been in a student organization. You've been a member, a leader. You've gone through different workshops. You've gone to activities, late night events. All, the rec center is typically part of student affairs because it's that auxiliary services perspective. You've ate in the dining halls. There's those touch points that exist throughout sort of your experience in a college or university, and a lot of it is student affairs based. And we're just now starting to recognize that why aren't students giving back to student affairs? It's because of our strategic communications, the way we don't think about branding, we don't think about sort of having strategy connect to plans. And literally, we're just getting to a point where people are starting to talk about that. So I think that it seems obvious, but again, it comes from those distinct silos that have sort of emerged over time. And at the end of the day, what's going to be interesting is if student affairs advancement and student affairs development really sort of picks up some steam, there's a little bit of the pie that's going to go away from other areas that haven't had to really work that hard to get it. You know what? I'm a biology major, so I'm going to donate to biology, or I'm going to donate to the College of Science, or I'm going to donate to, athletics because that was my weekend activity. But when student affairs starts to get into that mix, then it's going to be, I had an amazing experience in this residence hall. It made me who I am. I met lifetime friends. I met my future spouse. I was a student organization leader, and that's what propelled my career into X, Y, and Z. And now I'm going to give back to that. That's a big deal. And literally, I think we're just kind of starting to see, if you want to say low-hanging fruit, that's the one that's just been sitting there staring us all in the face, and we just haven't gone after it. Well, and I think for me, there's a couple things. One is autonomy. I think for folks that are sort of the solo practitioner or the consultant or whatever, you deal with a high level of you're responsible for yourself and you're responsible for making sure that the work gets done, and it's on you. And the other part of it is always recognizing that for everyone else, a lot of times this is new or you're their most important priority. When I get asked to speak at an event, the focus for the committee is that, they need everything from me right away. They need the headshot, the bio, the materials, because that's all they're worried about. That's all they're concerned about. Whereas I've got 20 or 30 of those lined up, and I'm trying to sort of shuffle through which ones I'm going to do today versus tomorrow versus the next day. When people, email me and it's been a couple hours and they say, why haven't you gotten back to me yet? And I said, I'm working on it. I'm doing my best. And I think we're so connected, and I'm very connected. I feel like I'm plugged in with a chip in my wrist at this point. But People will even get on Twitter. If I don't email them back, they'll tweet at me and say, "Well, why haven't you gotten back to me?" And I don't know what's next. Maybe they're going to send me a fax or something. So, you're managing those relationships. You're managing that communication. Vacation time is a tough thing. If you're the solo person and you go away, it's not as if you've got a replacement lined up, a proxy to handle stuff while you're gone. Now, you try to line it up with maybe the sort of the popular vacation times, the cycle of the year. But again, it's nice to kind of get out and get some free time on other schedules and stuff. So there's definitely that. And you're absolutely right. There are certain things that happen each year that are regular, consistent. For me, it's probably there's 3 or 4 events each year that I like to go to just because I like to go to them. They're not necessarily ones that I'm getting paid to go to.
So thanks everybody for joining us. We will see you next time for Hire It Solo. Thanks. Bye.